Zanu koku na tenshi na yuno ni shonin yanyo no shinwa ni nari. Welcome to our presentation on Chapter 34, Japan, brought to you by Luke Schumacher,
Gabriel Caraballo,
and Macy Mosier.
We will be covering Japan from 1333 to 1980, including art from the Muromachi, Momoyama, Edo, Meiji, and Showa periods.
During the Muromachi period from 1333 to 1573, Zen Buddhism rose to prominence. This led to more Buddhist temples, and because they were being built, rock gardens called Kursansui were also built. Muromachi painting had great variety in subjects and styles, and one important artist is Sesshu Toyo.
The Momoyama period from 1573 to 1650 was dominated by 3 warlords and 2 shogunates. Many of the works during this period were commissioned by warlords.
In 1185, the emperor appointed the first shogun in history. The shogun ran the military of Japan and used his position to seize power, creating the shogunate, or the Japanese feudal system. Feudal land-owning lords, called daimyo, led warriors called samurai, and pledged allegiance to the shogun.
With the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate in 1868, this marked the start of the Meiji and Showa period, or the modern era of Japanese art, and it went from 1868 to 1989. With non-Japanese people no longer being kept out by the government, Western influence started to appear in art in things like shading, perspective, and oil paints. Before we dive into the artworks, there are a few words we need to know.
The shogunate was the Japanese feudal system.
Ikoyu-i and Nikishi-i were types of woodblock prints.
Kakemono is a type of art done on hanging scrolls.
Finally, Nihon and Yoga mean Japanese and Western art respectively. Suzuki Harunobu's Evening Bell at the Clock is a woodblock print from an 8-part series, which is itself an adaptation of another Chinese series. It takes the form of a special woodblock print called a nisikie, or brocade picture, known for their sumptuous, brilliant colors and costly pigments.
Notice how this print is more different than a yukoi. Yukoi, or pictures of the floating world, were inexpensive prints that cost as much as a bowl of noodles. Popular during the Edo period, the nishiki-i were the most expensive and high quality.
In this print, we can see 2 women going about their lives. We, the viewers, are given a privileged glimpse of a private moment between a woman drying herself after a bath, shown on the right, and her maid on the left. Harunobu functionally popularized this subject, with a young woman going about their lives.
Notice how the maid seems to be looking off to the side. She's actually looking at a clock, which would have been a great temple bell in the Chinese series.
As for the context, this print perfectly showcases the Edo period. This time in Japan started when the ruling shogun made Edo, or modern-day Japan, Tokyo, Japan, his headquarters. This led to a time of rapid urbanization and a cultural paradigm shift in Japan. More and more people sought after worldly, sensual goods.
Hey, wait a second, this is really similar to the Renaissance period. The Dutch Republic also had rapid financial growth, and as a result, the demand for portraits and secular subjects skyrocketed. The same thing happened with the Duchy of Burgundy. I guess history really does repeat itself.
I've been a little homeless lately, Luke, and I can't live with my parents anymore because they refuse to abandon their Eurocentric views and acknowledge the greatness of Japanese art. Do you know anywhere where I can move in? I'm thinking of something that exudes effortless class, but it has to be very, very safe at the same time. I don't want any of my art-hating rival clans disturbing my peace while I analyze their favorite Japanese art.
OMG, you would not believe what I just found on Zillow. It is perfect for you, sister. It has 83 rooms surrounded by several circuit walls. perfect for housing a standing militia of art-loving warriors, giving yourself an extra layer of protection from your parents. Ooh, and if they manage to get past that, the residential complex is several stories above high, deeply inclined masonry walls that are virtually impossible for any art-hating enemy to scale. And
Nani? Are you okay?
it has a boat!
Dude, no way. This place sounds like the perfect place for me to escape to. What's it called, though?
It's called Shirasagi or White Heron Castle. Interesting name. I wonder where it came from.
Oh, I know. Well, actually, you know what? I think Macy does.
It's such an interesting place. It's named after the white plaster fire-resistant coating that's on all its wooden walls. Between the white coat and the wing-like profiles of its elegant tile roofs, it achieves a light, almost weightless look, despite its militaristic features. Gabriel, this looks like it's steel.
I don't know, guys. Azullo says it was made way back in 1346? That seems a little old.
Don't worry, man. It was enlarged and enhanced in 1581 by Hideyoshi and between 1601 and 1609. And they just spent 5 years renovating the roof and walls back in 2015. This work of architecture has truly been returned to its formal glory.
You know what, Luke? Maybe it will work. Dang it, I'm so glad the tumultuous Mayama period made this castle possible. If there wasn't such an intense power struggle between competing warlords, this castle might have never existed, and I would have never escaped my parents.
Take a look at these Chinese lions by Kano Itukut. This painting from the Momoyama period features two shishi, which are mythological lions, and are normally placed in front of shrines as guardians.
They, like other ideas during this time period, were imported from Korea, which originally came from China, where, as we know, all things are made.
One interpretation of these two shishi is that the left one has its mouth open, making the first sound of the Japanese alphabet, while the right one has its mouth closed, showing the last sound of the Japanese alphabet.
When they are put together, they represent the beginning and end of all things.
Another interpretation is that the left shishi has its mouth closed to eat bad spirits, and the right shishi has its mouth closed to protect good spirits.
In addition, shishi symbolize power and bravery, which fits this word because it was commissioned by warlords, and this is further supported by the obvious musculature of the lion.
Another thing that you may have noticed is the heavy black outlines, which are a trademark of the Kano school, and is where Ituku studied and was influenced by.
Sadly, Itoku was very rushed while making this, because he got so many requests from warlords and he couldn't put any of them off, or who would be in danger, and that led to him having to make a lower quality but faster image than intended.
My fellow art history buffs, now we're going to talk about something I am very passionate about. In fact, it's one of my favorite things in the entire world. Isaac Howard's face.
Luke, well, I love Isaac as much as the next guy, and his beautiful face. We're supposed to be talking about influential Japanese works of art, not Isaac's smoldering hot face.
Fine. I guess I can talk about my second passion instead. If you manage to take your eyes off Isaac's radiant face and piercing blue eyes, you can see he's holding a mug that features an altered version of the Katsushika Hokusai, aka the Great Wave of Kanagawa. The introduction of the multicolor woodblock print in 18th century Japan allowed art to be mass-produced at a cheap price, making it affordable for families with modest incomes. The Great Wave was also one of the first prints to take advantage of the more permanent European synthetic dye, Prussian blue, making it more resistant to fading than the more traditional dyes made from plants.
As much as I like looking at Isaac's face, let's switch to a more detailed image of the real Great Wave.
Fine, but the fact that the Great Wave made its way into a teenage American's hands on a coffee mug is a testament to the work's far-reaching and long-lasting presence and influence.
The Great Wave was made by Ando Hiroshige, the leading landscape printmaker of the mid-19th century. Hiroshige was sent on government-sponsored missions to make sketches of the Japanese landscapes that would eventually be turned into prints. The Great Wave came from the series, 36 views of Mount Fuji.
Hiroshige used low horizons, typical of Western painting, to highlight the size and menace of the wave towering over men in the trade boats, rowing for their lives. While the wave is what initially grabs your attention, the distant Mount Fuji, one of Hiroshi's personal obsession, shown right here, is framed by the wave. The fact that Mount Fuji is an active volcano also adds to the ominous, foreboding tone of the work.
Exactly. Hiroshige combined Western techniques with traditional flat and powerfully graphic curved triangles to create a print that became popular not only in its homeland but overseas as well.
This next painting is Takahashi Yuchi's Orion. It's a portrait of a geisha, or a Japanese female entertainer, done in oil paint.
Gabriel, are you sure this is a Japanese painting? This looks straight out of the Renaissance.
Good observation. Almost everything about this painting was influenced by Western art. Late 19th century Japan saw the rise of oil painting, borrowed from the West, and Yuichi himself opened a school to teach Japanese artists how to paint in Western style.
The Japanese borrowed oil painting, low horizons, and Renaissance naturalism from the West. These inspirations made Orion a Yoga or Western style painting.
But what was the point of all this Western inspiration?
The patron of Orion was basically the Japanese version of a boomer. He was nostalgic for the good old days when the geisha's hairstyle was actually in style. Notice how it's meticulously recreated. The naturalism of the West was perfect for the geisha's complicated hairstyle.
Yuichi departed from the ukiyo-e style of idealizing its subjects and opted for the Western option of including both the good and the bad. This is important, especially since the painting functioned as a bit of a historical record of a past time.
This kakemono is from the Momoyama period and is of Avalokitesvara, whom is the Bodhisattva, which is a potential Buddha who embodies the compassion of all Buddhas, as she pours drops of the water of wisdom on most likely the child seeker of wisdom.
This scene in the painting is from the Avatam Sakya Sutra. Believe it or not, it's not a Harry Potter spell, and it's an influential book in East Asian Buddhism.
This painting was not only of religious significance, but also historical, since it caused Japanese art to switch from yogas, or Western art, back to a new form of Nihonga, or Japanese-style art, and marked the start of the modern era of Japanese art.
Hogai studied a combination of Japanese art before and after Western influence, and this is shown through the Japanese subject and Western style with aerial perspective and bright contrast.
It also bears similarities to paintings of the Christian Madonna because there is a feminine figure caring for a child, and in addition, both carry religious importance.
We hope you learned something about Japanese art, whether it was soaring castles,
Fancy hairdos,
Or mystical lions.
take this presentation as a chance to appreciate Japan's often overlooked cultural background. Also, make sure you smash that like button, lightly tap the notification bell, and hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't ever miss an upload.
Thank you for listening.
listening.
Bye.
Bye.